Thus, I was able to see the changing world in a series of glimpses.
If every culture produces its own mythology, then America long ago mythologized the Old West as a symbol for those traits of toxic masculinity that we find both desirable and admirable. This idea of the lone, self-reliant individual bound by a moral code and facing unflinchingly whatever trials were thrust upon them shaped the characters of generations of Americans. In fact, these two real morality plays became so popular and so prevalent that the cinematic portrayal of the Hollywood cowboy became the de facto stereotype for Americans overseas. It became, for better or worse, how other cultures explain brash, direct, and sometimes pushy Americans. The cinematic cowboy rode high, wide, and far for decades, until a new breed of self-reliant adventurer stole his thunder, literally. The new adventurer was the astronaut. At people like Gene Roddenberry went from writing scripts for Have Gun Will Travel to penning scripts for Star Trek. The Western managed to hold its ground against the newcomers through most of the 60s. By the early 1970s, the writing was on the bunkhouse wall. Name above the credits wasn't John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, a known bankable commodity. Studios weren't interested. They were now gambling on the new public fascination with science fiction. But so iconic had become the hero traits we associated with the cinematic cowboys, they just kept cropping up over and over in whatever media we were watching. I mean, come on. There's a reason Han Solo wore his blaster that way. It was just a stable of Hollywood writers and producers at the time. Why do you think Gene always referred to his original vision for Star Trek as Wagon Train to the Stars? It was inevitable that the two genres would collide head-on at some point. In 1979, director Ridley Scott made a little scare picture set in space called Alien. You might have heard of it. The film was enormously successful, and 40 years later is considered a classic, even if Scott's later prequel stories, supposedly set in the same universe, that's a different argument for another day, were not. Directors got to stop making prequels for successful movies. In 1986, James Cameron added an action component to the mix, resulting in a genuine box office smash and virtually guaranteeing regular sequels for decades to come. So, why am I talking about cowboy movies and the Alien franchise in a distinctly not aliens or cowboy movie? Oh, don't worry. I'll prove this is a cowboy film. In fact, I'll show you which one. But I'm also not sure this isn't also an alien movie. I mean, granted, spoiler alert, there aren't any xenomorphs running around slaughtering people. I'll be the first one to admit it'd be a much better film if there were. But I still maintain this is the lost Alien prequel. The one we should have had. You don't believe me? See for yourself. We start off with a familiar font, Near Silence. After the title, we get a nice shot of Jupiter and a science lesson about Io, because we've never seen this form of exposition before. Now look at the construction and architecture of this mining station. Functional, only as elaborate as it needs to be. This is a believable industrial structure. Is it such a stretch to believe that a society that could build this could build space-based mineral refineries designed to be towed to targets by what essentially are space tugs? I mean, it beats the hell out of the Red Dwarf approach, I suppose. After a few fun facts about the mining operation, we jump right into the exciting world of labor relations. Seems like the union isn't doing its job, and the workers are getting a little anxious. Also, do the spacesuits look kind of familiar. Well, a couple of the workers vent to each other. One man suddenly starts acting a little strange.
What off? Fire! Please help me! Get off! Get off! Get off! Oh, get off!
See? This is what happens when you don't clean the still properly between runs. Pop quiz. What's the most expedient method to get rid of spiders in your suit? Here we meet the Marshal's wife, Carol, played by Kika Markham, and Nicholas Barnes is his son, Paul. Sean Connery enters and shows us what it takes to be Father of the Year material. We all know Ridley Scott's fetish for accuracy in his sets and his props. I know this isn't a Ridley Scott film, but hear me out. Look at the Marshal's terminal. Everything works in those displays. I mean, they're not really telling us anything, but they all work. Oh yeah, and the Marshal Sergeant, played by James B. Seeking, he mentions the tickets his wife asked about came through. Yeah, somebody knows something we don't. This wifey is suddenly looking really guilty. So we can see there's trouble in paradise, but dear John Law seems completely oblivious. Next, we jump to the cafeteria where Shifty Worker A sits down and is quickly joined by Shifty Worker B. Does it really matter who plays them? They're not going to be. Shifty B heads out and eventually makes his way to a locker. We're pretty certain something transpired between him and Shifty Tattooed Worker C, but so far we're not privy to the details. Peter Boyle, who plays the manager slash mind boss slash evil bastard Shepard, is showing us his bored face. Company men are having a meet and greet with a new marshal. Amazing how much cigarette smoke there is in a sealed environment. I mean, it's not like everyone's life depends on recycling air or anything. Pat Starr plays Mrs. Spector. You know that one person in every office so damn cheery all the time? Apparently even the moons of Jupiter aren't far enough to escape these people. As far as someone named Spector in a Sean Connery movie, let's just let that one go for a minute. With the glad handing over, Shepard wraps up the meeting with some very strong hints that the Marshal should stay out of his and everybody else's business. See this face? You do not want to see Sean Connery make this face. Afterwards, Sergeant Montone offers O'Neill some sage career advice about how to get along in the corporate structure. Don't piss off powerful assholes. One of the things I love about this movie is the industrialized mass production feel of things like putting on a spacesuit. The whole thing's reduced to the most efficient process possible. This is deep space, but you can swear just as easily these guys were going down in the coal mines of Kentucky or Pennsylvania. Without the spacesuits, of course. Unless OSHA's really stepped up its game. One of the men decides to skip the whole process, go straight for the elevator because, hey, efficiency. Also because there's always that one guy who likes to cut corners. Still, he seems pretty happy about the whole deal, even as his fellow miners fly into a panic and try and stop him. And at least the Marshal's gonna have plenty of witnesses this time. As you might expect, this doesn't go well. Meanwhile, Marshal comes home to an oddly dark and quiet apartment. Quick question, especially relevant now in the age of social media culture. Is leaving a Dear John video message considered as low rent as leaving a voicemail message? I mean, at least it's not a text. Yes. Long story short, the missus has had enough of space. Seems in the Ridley-verse, the final frontier is a corporate sponsorship plastered all over it. Between that and the whole not being able to breathe outside without an exploding thing, yeah, she's done with it. So, bottom line, Carol's taken Paul to Earth. She says she still loves him and she wants to join them, with or without them, They're leaving. We move quickly to the morning briefing at the Marshals Office as they review the night's activities. Just normal stuff. The drunk arrests, the fight in a bar, the fact they lost a dozen nuclear detonators. Oh, don't worry. They managed to find them again. Subject of the dead miner comes up, but they rule out homicide since the man walked out of the airlock on his own. Pushing the med bay, we meet Dr. Lazarus, played by Frances Sternhagen. She's a snarky woman who does not play well with others, is quick to tell you that, and if you take offense, don't worry, she guarantees no fucks were given. Marshal O'Neill's beginning to smell a depressurized rat. He asked Dr. Lazarus to give him a list of all the people who've gone nuts over the last couple of months, but at least he asked nicely.
I'd like it really soon, or I might just kick your nasty ass all over this room. That's a Marshal joke.
Go back to the workers and we see Sagan, played by Steven Burkhoff, because nothing illegal ever happens in the men's room. What? It was a drug deal? Who could have possibly seen that coming? Back to the Marshals Quarters, even millions of miles from Earth, when the guy's wife up and leaves him, the guy's best friend is still going to try and console him with pizza and beer. O'Neill, on the other hand, isn't impressed, especially since it's his beer Montone's drinking.
You know, the hookers here are nice.
Moving on. O'Neill shoos Montone out to listen to his Dear John video again, but his self-pity party is interrupted by an emergency call. Yup. Marshal keeps a rack full of loaded shotguns in his quarters. Mine worker / crane operator Sagan was completely lost his marbles, and unfortunately, he's not alone. Sagan's holding a terrified hooker at knife point. Bill tries to talk him down, but Sagan's stoned out of his gourd, and he's not having any of it. Realizing he's running out of time, O'Neill gets one of the maintenance workers to open the pressure seals on the door locks. He explains what he's going to do, what's going to happen, and keeps trying to talk the man down. Quick note here, even Burkhoff is really good at playing a psycho. Meanwhile, Montone has his own agenda, and he shoots Sagan before O'Neill can arrest him. We get to see the 80s version of a high-tech medical scanner. I'm pretty sure that thing plays Tempest on another channel. Dr. Lazarus done her homework, though. In the last 6 months, 28 people have freaked the F out for seemingly no reason at all. 6 months before that, it was 24, and the 6 months before that, only 2. Meaning something's making the miners go insane, and the company is shipping off the bodies before any testing can be done and dumping them halfway to Earth. Nothing suspicious there. O'Neill's in the warehouse, and he's searching for something. He finds a body bag with a tag on it that says, "To be jettisoned." Next, O'Neill goes through the shipping container and finds Sagan's body and takes a blood sample. Dr. Lazarus immediately realizes the blood is from a dead man, so she gets a gold star. Yay! While analyzing the blood, she finds some very weird stuff, though. We're also treated some very 80s graphics and vintage button pushing. Surprisingly, the computer graphics obviously have not aged well in this film. What's disturbing is the graphics in 1971's The Andromeda Strain are actually better quality than this film, and yeah, we'll probably get around to that memory at some point. The sum of all this is that there's a very nasty narcotic in the dead man's blood. Super amphetamine. Makes you work like a horse, and then fries your brain. O'Neill runs a criminal records check looking for drug-related offenses specifically, and he gets 2 hits. And who authorized their employment? Yeah, the general manager. I know. You're shocked, right? Cut to the bar. Neil's probably wondering the same thing I am. Are those supposed to be holograms or live performances? Anyway, O'Neill finds his man via CCTV. Sees Deputy Montone in a secret meeting with Shepard and the guys with the drug offenses, Sporta and Yario, respectively. Gee, who would have seen that coming? We then cut to the world's most passive-aggressive game of racquetball. O'Neill confronts Montone about his connection to Shepard, and O'Neill ultimately tells him, just keep taking your money, stay out of the way. Back in his office, O'Neill watches one of his suspects on camera and happens to catch what he thinks is a drug deal. Catch him in the act, there's a foot chase through the entire station. Strangely, at least in this scene, director Peter Hyams does Ridley Scott better than Ridley Scott. Chasing ends in the cafeteria kitchen. Cue the fight scene where O'Neill proves he's a certified badass by sticking his hand into the deep fryer to retrieve the evidence bag that Sporta dumped in there. Then Sporta finds out what it's like to get your ass kicked by Sean Connery. Cut to the holding cells, O'Neill is interrogating his prisoner, who is being held in a very innovative way, suspended in airless vacuum in a spacesuit. I kind of like this, even though, if you think about it, this is probably the most problematic, expensive, and potentially risky way imaginable to house a prisoner. As cool as this shot is, no private company is going to pay for this setup when a simple jail cell with 3 hots and a cot is so much cheaper. Nice to know that even in the far future, the federal government can still find a way to waste taxpayer money. Anyway, O'Neill makes the obligatory threats, but Sagan's not impressed. O'Neill finally confronts GM Shepard, who immediately offers him a bribe and describes the corporate Goliath that he's facing.
You try and meddle, I want you to know what you're meddling with.
Shepard thinks O'Neill's hero act is cute. Naive, but cute.
You got something to prove it to yourself, not to me.
I'll see you around.
And O'Neill leaves after blowing off Shepard's parting threats. Back in the jail, which is currently in lights out mode, to check on the prisoner, and we get to see what happens when you suffer explosive decompression in a spacesuit. And if losing his prisoner and his only link to Shepard wasn't bad enough, he discovers Montone's body hanging in a locker. Now, a low-rent host would make some kind of David Carradine joke here. I'll just settle for putting that image in your head. Montone did not die in vain, however. He left an encrypted final message for his boss, telling him where the drug shipment was. Doug Yario tries to garrote him, but O'Neill shows us his knowledge of history and why U.S. Marines are called leathernecks. So, despite appearances, he escapes a trap. And then proceeds to kick the crap out of Yario, literally, and find where the drugs are. Now, everybody knows that the bad guy code specifies the villain must warn the hero of his intentions prior to any dedicated lethal attack.
Marshal, you're dead. You hear me?
Don't you remember when he sat in that chair and said, "You'll never hang me, I'll come back. I'll kill you, Will King. I swear it, I'll kill you."
After exchanging the requisite threats with Shepard, O'Neill engages in a little high-tech wiretapping and discovers some hitmen have been sent to kill him. Well, there's a shock. As O'Neill watches the minutes of his life counting down, he gets a call from his wife. Just like Gary Cooper's wife in High Noon, she tries one last time to get him to come with her. He, of course, refuses. It's a hero thing. And wouldn't you know it, the shuttle arrives early. Now, take a look at this shuttle. To me, at least, this looks like a combination of an old Sikorsky sky crane and the cockpit of the UD-4L Cheyenne dropship. No, they're not exact by any means. But if Cheyenne came online 50-plus years in the future, It makes sense the utility lifting bodies would be more streamlined and less purely industrial in construction. By the way, this is just a personal gripe, admittedly. It's obvious the Marshal Service issues cut down Remington 1100s of some variant. Except, that's not how a Remington shotgun loads. Done by the prop department to make the shotgun look more like a lever-action rifle in functionality. I know why they did it, but anybody who knows anything about shotguns, this is the sort of little detail that just drives us nuts. Hey, everybody has their thing. The assassins, played by Angus McGinnis, P.H. Moriarty, and Doug Robinson, respectively, these guys might as well be wearing name tags that say "hired killers" on the back of their jumpsuits. O'Neill plays cat and mouse through the station with the killers, and by now you can guess which movie this came from. O'Neill's injured, but he manages to elude the killers, although he leaves a blood trail. Now, I might be wrong, but look at that metal grating on the floor. Look familiar to you? It should. This is the same grating that a certain group of Marines were constantly welding on LV-426. O'Neill bumps into Dr. Lazarus, who wants to help.
Jesus, take it easy.
Donning a spacesuit, O'Neill decides it's time to take the fight outside. Explosive decompression. Don't you hate it when that happens? Scratch one bad guy. Officer Ballard gives the doctor a jump scare and wants to know where O'Neill is. I'm sure there's absolutely nothing suspicious about this.
Is the Marshal all right? Where is he?
Okay, admittedly, there was no fight to the death in Zero G and High Noon. I'll give him that one. Triumphant but disgusted O'Neill confronts Shepard and punches his lights out.
Shepard. Oh, fuck it.
The look of a film is director's decision. Just looking at Outland, it's obvious, to me at least, this film was intended to look like it belonged in the Ridleyverse. If we're being charitable, we'll say it's just a happy accident. If we're being realistic, it was likely an intentional cash grab. Still, the fact remains that it does look like it takes place in the same universe, and even without the Xenos, this is still a better film than Prometheus or Covenant. Outland also failed to bring the successful merger of science fiction and Western into prominence. We'd have to wait another 21 years to see that vision realized. People still didn't understand it, especially. So what do I think of Outland? I think it's flawed. Plot is a little slow in places. The action scenes, when they come, they're well shot. Overall, the film's very atmospheric, but I think that turns out to be both its greatest strength and its most acute weakness. The film also struggles with tone. It's as if Outland doesn't know what kind of story it's trying to tell, fluctuating wildly from science fiction film to crime drama before becoming a full-out Western in the third act. There's also that look, for better or worse. Outland was made to look like it belongs in the Ridleyverse, so you'll forgive me if I continue to view this as the Lost Aliens prequel, the one we should have had. Besides, if there really were a film featuring Sean Connery fighting xenomorphs, you know you'd pay to go see it. I'm the Hammerson, and that's what I remember. One last thing, I wanted to introduce my special guest reviewer for this memory. This is Peanut, and he's a rescue from about 11 weeks old. He was voluntarily turned into the shelter because Mommy and Daddy didn't have enough room for another dog, but we do.
You know, the hookers here are nice.